The wind outside did not just blow. It screamed a high-velocity shriek that tore across the ice fields of the rim and slammed against the composite walls of the cabin like a physical blow. Inside, however, the silence was expensive. It was the kind of silence that cost 400,000 credits paid in full to a shell corporation that promised total isolation. Peter stood in the center of the living room, his breath pluming slightly in the frigid air, before the heating units fully kicked in. He was a man who looked like he was made of spare parts, held together by exhaustion, broad shoulders that slumped under invisible weight hands, scarred from years of engine grease and plasma burns, and eyes that had seen too much and now just wanted to look at a blank wall. "Pine," Peter said, his voice rusty. He had not spoken to another living soul in 6 days. "System online," the house AI responded. The voice was synthesized flat and aggressively unhelpful. It sounded like a bureaucrat reading a tax form. "Ambient temperature is minus 20 degrees. Internal temperature rising. Welcome home, Peter." "Don't call it home," Peter muttered, dropping his duffel bag on the floor. It hit the hardwood with a heavy thud. "Call it storage." "Designation updated storage," Pine replied, without missing a beat. "Would you like to initiate the welcome sequence? It includes jazz and a simulated fireplace." "No. Lights at 20%. Lock the doors. Do not disturb mode for forever." Peter walked to the window. The glass was reinforced, triple-layered against the hostile atmosphere of the planet. Outside, the snow was a horizontal blur of white violence. He touched the cold surface. This was what he wanted. No comms. No responsibilities. No people to save, no people to fail. Just him and the white noise of the universe. He turned away, intending to unpack his few belongings, a bottle of whiskey, a stack of physical books, and a medkit he carried out of habit rather than necessity. That was when he heard it. It was faint at first, a low-frequency vibration that traveled up through the soles of his boots. Thrum, thrum, thrum. It sounded like a generator misfiring or a ventilation fan with a broken bearing. Peter frowned. He had inspected the specs of this place for 3 weeks before buying. The engineering was supposed to be silent. "Pine status report on the heating unit." "Heating unit functioning within normal parameters," the AI droned. "I hear a noise, a vibration, under the floor. Diagnostics show no mechanical failures. Perhaps you are experiencing auditory hallucinations due to isolation. It occurs in 30% of new occupants." Peter ignored the AI. He knelt, pressing his ear to the floorboards. They were reclaimed wood, dark and heavy, polished to a shine that felt out of place in this savage wilderness. He closed his eyes. Rum, rum. It was not mechanical. It was organic. It was irregular, wet and deep. It sounded like a massive set of lungs straining against fluid. Peter stood up, his lethargy vanishing. He went to his bag and pulled out a heavy-duty multi-tool. He walked to the center of the room where the vibration seemed strongest. He tapped the wood. Hollow. "Pine, is there a basement?" "Negative. The blueprints indicate a solid foundation." "Then the blueprints are lying," Peter said. He jammed the pry bar end of his tool into the seam between 2 wide planks. The wood groaned, protesting the intrusion. Peter put his back into it, his muscles bunching. With a sharp crack, the nails gave way. He ripped the board up and tossed it aside. Then another. Then a third. The smell hit him first. It was not the smell of dry timber or insulation. It was the smell of a zoo that had been set on fire, ozone musk, old blood and fear. Below the floor joists, there was no foundation. There was a grate, a heavy industrial steel mesh, looking down into a dark pit. Peter clicked on his tactical flashlight. The beam cut through the dust motes and stabbed into the gloom below. It revealed a cage. It was a small, cramped cube of reinforced titanium, barely 6 feet by 6 feet, suspended in a tangle of cables and hydraulic lines. And inside the cage, something massive shifted. The beam caught the reflection of eyes first, They were huge, the size of saucers, glowing with a tapetum lucidum that shone a brilliant toxic green. Pupils slit vertically, contracting instantly in the harsh light. Peter recoiled, his heart hammering a frantic rhythm against his ribs. The creature was humanoid, but only just. She, the curvature of the chest suggested female, was curled into a tight ball in the corner. Her skin was a tapestry of scars and fur, a sleek velvet coat of midnight blue, stripped away in patches to reveal pale, bruised skin underneath. She had ears that tapered to sharp points, swiveling toward him, and a tail that was thick and muscular, wrapped around her legs like a shield. She was huge. Even curled up, Peter could tell she would tower over him if she stood. Muscles coiled under her fur like steel cables. She looked like a weapon of war that had been discarded in a damp hole. Peter froze, the flashlight trembling slightly in his hand. "What the hell?" The creature lifted her head. Her face was feline with a short muzzle, and lips that pulled back to reveal teeth designed for tearing reinforced armor. She stared up at him through the floor joists, through the grate, through the light. And then she made a sound. It was not a roar. It was not a hiss. It was a low, vibrating rumble that shook the floorboards Peter was kneeling on. She opened her mouth and a voice, scratchy, broken, and deeply unsettling, emerged. Meow. It was a mockery. A terrifying, deep-throated mimicry of a domestic kitten spoken by a creature that could likely crush a tank with her bare hands. It was the sound of something that had been broken and put back together wrong. Peter stared. The absurdity of it clashed with the horror. "Did you just—" The creature shifted again, and the light caught something around her neck. It was a thick collar, matte black metal, studded with nodes that dug into the flesh of her throat. As Peter watched, a light on the collar pulsed a slow, rhythmic red. Status active. "Pine," Peter whispered, not taking his eyes off the prisoner. "Call the authorities. Local enforcement. Now." Unable to comply, Pine said, the voice sudden and loud in the tense room. "Communications are disabled during lockdown." "Lockdown? I didn't order a lockdown." "Property secured," Pine said. There was a mechanical thud, followed by the hiss of hydraulics. Steel shutters slammed down over the windows of the cabin, sealing out the snowstorm. The heavy bolt on the front door engaged with a sound like a gunshot. The ambient lights in the room shifted from warm yellow to a harsh warning amber. "Warning!" Pine continued, tone completely devoid of urgency. "Unauthorized access to containment unit detected. Please, step away from the asset." "Asset?" Peter scrambled back as the floor beneath him shuddered. "Open the door, Pine. That's a person down there." "That is property. Please step away or defensive protocols will engage." Below the floor, the creature, Bessie, though Peter did not know her name, yet reacted to the change in lighting. The amber warning light seemed to trigger something visceral in her. She uncoiled with terrifying speed. She didn't stand. She launched herself. Clang. She hit the roof of her cage, the underside of the grate Peter was kneeling on, with force that rattled his teeth. Claws, 5 inches long and gleaming like obsidian, sparked against the metal mesh. "Meow!" she screamed, but this time it was not a mimicry. It was a war cry twisted into a word she had been forced to learn. She slashed at the bars, saliva flying from her jaws. Peter fell backward, scrambling on his elbows across the hardwood. Hey, stop!" She dropped back to the floor of her cage and paced a frantic cage tiger rhythm. 3 steps turn. 3 steps turn. Peter saw her flank now. There was a raw, weeping wound on her left side, old blood matting the blue fur. She was favoring her right leg. She was starving, hurt, and terrified. The red light on her collar began to blink faster. Bip, bip, bip. "Pine, unlock the cage," Peter yelled. "Authorization code required," Pine said. "I am the owner. I bought the damn house." "You purchased the structure. You did not purchase the privileges for the basement tier. Please refrain from damaging the merchandise." Peter cursed, a long stream of expletives that would have made a spacer blush. He looked at the creature. She was throwing herself against the bars again, her breathing coming in jagged gasps. If she kept doing that, she was going to tear her stitches, or break a bone. Peter's instinct, the one he had bought this cabin to kill, surged to the surface. It was the instinct of the field medic. He used to be the instinct of the man who fixed things that were broken. He crawled back toward the hole in the floor, keeping low. "Get back!" he shouted at her. "You're hurting yourself!" She stopped, looking up at him. Her ears flattened against her skull. She hissed a sound like steam escaping a high-pressure valve. "I'm not going to hurt you," Peter said, holding his hands up, palms open. I'm not with them." He reached for his bag, dragging it closer with his foot. He unzipped it and pulled out a bottle of water and a packet of nutrient-dense rations. "Water," he said, holding the bottle up. "Do you understand water?" The creature watched the bottle. Her tongue flicked out, wetting dry black lips. Peter hesitated. The grate was mesh. He couldn't pass the bottle through. But there was a small service hatch in the corner of the grate, secured by a simple latch. "I'm going to open the hatch," Peter said, his voice dropping to a low, soothing register. He had used this voice on panicked soldiers and wounded refugees. "Just to drop this. Don't take my hand off. I need it for opening jars." He moved slowly. The creature, crouched muscles, bunched ready to spring. The collar on her neck pulsed faster. Peter flipped the latch and cracked the hatch open just an inch. He dropped the plastic water bottle through. It fell 6 feet and hit the metal floor of the cage. Bessie pounced on it. She didn't unscrew the cap. She bit through the plastic, crushing the bottle in her jaws and drinking the water as it sprayed out. It was a display of raw desperation that made Peter's stomach twist. He dropped the nutrient bar next. She snatched it up, swallowing it whole, wrapper and all. "Okay," Peter breathed, sitting back on his heels. "Okay, you're hungry. That's a start." Bessie looked up at him. The water dripped from her chin. The green fire in her eyes had dimmed just a fraction. Her ears perked up, swiveling toward him. "See?" Peter said. "I'm not your enemy." Tick. The sound came from the speakers, hidden in the walls. It was distinct from the wind outside. Tick, tick, tick. It was a countdown. "Pine," Peter said. "What is that?" "Scheduled event warning," Pine replied. "Inbound connection establishing." "Connection from who?" Before the AI could answer, the audio system crackled. A new voice filled the room. It wasn't the flat, synthesized voice of Pine. It was smooth, rich, and dripping with amusement. "New owner," the voice said. "Well, isn't that a surprise? I see the real estate agent forgot to mention the amenities." Peter stood up, scanning the room for a camera. "Who is this?" "Names are for friends, Peter. Or may I call you Peter? The transaction record says Peter." The voice chuckled. "You bought a nice box, Peter. But you really should have checked what was inside the wrapping paper." Down in the pit, Bessie froze. She knew that voice. A low whine built in her throat. She backed into the corner of the cage, shaking her head, as if trying to dislodge a sound that wasn't there. "You're trespassing," Peter said, trying to sound authoritative. "This is a private frequency." "Oh, it's very public, Peter," the voice said. "Or it's about to be. We have viewers waiting. They paid good money to see the asset perform. And since my usual handler seems to be absent, and you are there, well, the show must go on." "What show?" Peter demanded. "The dance, Peter. The dance of the predator." Below, the collar around Bessie's neck turned from a pulsing red to a solid, blinding white. Bessie screamed. It was a sound of pure agony. Her body arched, her spine bending backward at an unnatural angle. Foam gathered at the corners of her mouth. The pupils of her eyes dilated until there was no green, left only black voids of chemically induced rage. "Stop it!" Peter yelled at the ceiling. "You're killing her!" "I'm motivating her," the voice corrected. "Stimulants administered. Aggression inhibitors disengaged." Let's see what she does with those bars now. Bessie launched herself at the ceiling again. This time, the metal mesh of the grate buckled upward. Peter scrambled back as a claw, sharp enough to slice diamonds, tore through the floorboard inches from his knee. She was insane now. The intelligence he had seen in her eyes moments ago was gone, replaced by a chemical storm. She was tearing at the cage, tearing at herself. She slammed her shoulder into the titanium bars again and again. Crack. Peter heard the bone snap. Or maybe it was the bar. He didn't care. "Turn it off," Peter roared. "Can't," the voice said, sounding bored. "The audience loves the struggle. It builds anticipation. But she looks a bit sluggish. Maybe a higher dose." "No." Peter looked at the creature. She was going to kill herself trying to get out. She was bashing her head against the metal, blood flying in dark arcs. Peter grabbed his medkit. He didn't think. He just moved. He kicked the rug aside, exposing more of the grate. "Hey!" Peter shouted, hammering his fist on the floor. "Hey, look at me!" Bessie didn't hear him. She was lost in the white noise of the neural override. Peter opened the medkit. His hands were shaking, but his fingers remembered the drill. Syringe. Ampoule. Sedative, powerful stuff meant for spacers going through jump psychosis. It wouldn't knock her out, not with her mass, but it might cut through the stimulant cocktail. "I need to get close," Peter muttered to himself. "Don't die, Peter. Stupid way to die." He crawled to the service hatch he had used for the water. Bessie was directly below it, thrashing. He reached through. "Bessie!" he shouted, giving her a name because he couldn't call her it anymore. She looked up. Her face was a mask of blood and madness. She snarled and lunged up her jaws, snapping inches from his hand. "Easy," Peter gasped, pulling his hand back just in time. "Easy, big cat." The voice on the speakers laughed. "Brave. Stupid, but brave." The collar flared brighter. Bessie convulsed. She raised her claws to her own face as if to tear the collar off, digging deep furrows into her own neck. "No." Peter jammed his arm through the hatch, risking everything. He grabbed her shoulder. It was like grabbing a vibrating engine block. "Don't do that!" She roared and twisted, biting down on his forearm. Peter screamed. He felt the pressure immense and crushing like a hydraulic press. But she didn't puncture. Her teeth were locked on the thick fabric of his winter coat, pressing into the muscle, bruising the bone, but she hadn't shorn through. She was fighting it. Somewhere under the drugs and the pain, and the voice in her head, she was holding back. Peter gritted his teeth against the pain. He held the syringe in his free hand. He brought it down, aiming for the cluster of veins in her neck, just above the collar. "Breathe," Peter grunted, staring into her black, dilated eyes. "Breathe with me." He slammed the needle in. Bessie stiffened. She bit down harder for 1 second. Peter felt his radius bow under the pressure, and then she let go. She slumped back, crashing to the floor of the cage. Peter withdrew his arm, gasping for air. His sleeve was soaked in her saliva and his own sweat. He clutched his bruised arm, peering down. The white light on the collar faded back to a sullen red. The voice on the speaker made a tisk sound. "Spoil sport," the voice said. "You ruined the climax. That chemical mixture costs 5,000 credits a dose." "Get out of my house," Peter rasped. "Oh, I'm not in your house, Peter. But don't worry. Since you interrupted the broadcast, we have to reschedule. And since you seem to want to keep the asset..." The ticking sound returned. Louder this time. Faster. Tick, 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 tick. "The recovery team is automatic," the voice said pleasantly. "They don't like it when people touch their toys. Estimated arrival 4 hours. Good luck, Peter." The audio cut with a sharp static click. Silence returned to the cabin, but it was no longer the expensive silence of isolation. It was the heavy, suffocating silence of a trap waiting to spring. Peter looked down through the grate. Bessie was lying on her side, her chest heaving. The sedative was fighting the stimulant, leaving her in a twilight state. She looked small now, curled up in the filth of the cage. Slowly, painfully, she lifted her head. She looked up at Peter, her eyes unfocused, swimming with confusion. She dragged herself a few inches across the metal floor until she was directly under the spot where Peter lay. She rested her head on her paws, staring up at him. "Meow," she whispered. It was weak. It was broken. But it wasn't angry. Peter leaned his forehead against the cool wood of the floorboards. His arm throbbed. The storm outside howled, and the countdown beneath the floor ticked away the seconds of his life. "Yeah," Peter whispered back, closing his eyes. "Meow to you too." He wasn't going to get any sleep tonight. The storm outside had not relented, but the quality of the silence inside the cabin had changed. It was no longer the empty, expensive silence of a man hiding from the world. It was a heavy, pregnant silence, filled with the breathing of two different species, and the hum of a machine that was deciding whether or not to kill them both. Peter sat on the edge of the sofa, a mug of black coffee cooling in his hands. He had not slept. He had spent the remaining hours of the night sitting in a chair facing the hole in the floor, watching the grate, watching the shadows move in the pit below. The sedative he had administered to the creature Bessie, he reminded himself, had worn off 2 hours ago. She was awake now. Peter stood up, his joints popping, and walked to the edge of the torn-up floorboards. He expected to see her cowering in the corner again, or perhaps throwing herself against the bars in another chemically induced rage. She was doing neither. Bessie sat in the center of the cage, her legs crossed in a way that looked almost meditative if not for the lethal claws resting on her knees. Her posture was upright, her spine straight. The terrifying feral madness of the previous night was gone, replaced by a cold, sharp intelligence. She was watching him. Her eyes, those large saucer-like discs of green bioluminescence, tracked his movement with the precision of a radar dish. She was not hiding in the shadows anymore. She was sitting in the light, daring him to look at her. "Morning," Peter said. His voice sounded loud in the small room. Bessie did not blink. Her ears, tufted with black fur, swiveled toward him. She remained silent. "I made coffee," Peter said, lifting the mug slightly. "I don't suppose you drink coffee. Caffeine might metabolize into a neurotoxin for your physiology." "I'm not risking it." Bessie tilted her head. It was a bird-like movement on a feline frame. She opened her mouth, revealing those serrated teeth, and Peter flinched instinctively. But she did not roar. "Water," she rasped. Her voice was different this morning. It was still rough, like gravel tumbling in a mixer, but the desperate mimicked meow was gone. This was a voice that had once given orders, or perhaps announced victories. Peter nodded. "Water. I can do water." He went to the kitchenette, filled a large plastic bowl, and walked back to the grate. He knelt down. The distance between them was only 6 feet vertically, but it felt like a canyon. He tied a length of paracord to the bowl and lowered it down through the service hatch. Bessie waited until the bowl touched the floor of the cage. She didn't pounce this time. She moved with fluid, deliberate grace, uncoiling her long limbs. She picked up the bowl with two hands that were covered in fur, but possessed opposable thumbs and startlingly human dexterity, and drank deep, controlled gulps. When she finished, she set the bowl down and looked up. "You," she said. One word. An accusation. "Me," Peter agreed. "I'm Peter." "Peter," she tested the name. She made it sound like a curse word. "Peter, who buys cages?" "I bought a cabin," Peter corrected her, sitting back on his heels. "I didn't know it came with a basement. Or a prisoner." Bessie let out a sound that might have been a laugh or a cough. It was dry and bitter. "Rich man buys box. Surprised when box has contents. Stupid." "I won't argue with that," Peter said. He rubbed his face, feeling the stubble on his chin. "I came here to get away from people, to find some quiet. I thought the rim would be empty enough." Bessie stared at him, her vertical pupils widening slightly. She seemed to be analyzing him, stripping away the layers of his heavy winter coat and his exhaustion to see the motivation underneath. "You run," she stated. From what memories, Peter said honestly. He usually lied about this part, telling people he was on sabbatical or retired. But looking at this creature in a cage lying seemed pointless. I wanted a place where I didn't have to feel anything, where the days would just pass until they ran out, Bessie snorted. She tapped the side of her head with a claw. Bad plan, pain follows. It has a nose. Pine, Peter said, glancing at the ceiling sensor. Translation, pain follows. The AI's voice was crisp and devoid of irony. Correction. The subject utilized a dialectic idiom from the Rissarian lowlands. A literal translation suggests bread follows. The subject implies that wherever you go, sustenance or the burden of survival will pursue you. Peter looked back down at Bessie. Bread follows. Bessie rolled her eyes, a gesture so human it was startling. Machine is idiot. Pain. Hurt. It tracks. Like wolf. You run it chases, you stand it bites. But if you stand, you can bite back. I'm tired of biting back, Peter muttered. And apparently the machine thinks I'm going to be haunted by a baguette. Bessie bared her teeth in a grin that was terrifying, but not aggressive. Bread is also scary, if it is stale, Peter laughed. It was a rusty sound scraping his throat. He hadn't laughed in 6 months. The absurdity of the situation, joking about bread, with an alien gladiator in his basement, while a death clock ticked in the walls, broke something loose in his chest. Okay, Peter said. Point taken. So if I can't run, what do I do? Open the door, Bessie said. The humor vanished instantly. She pointed a claw at the lock of her cage. Let me out. I kill the ones who come. You hide. Pain goes away. Peter looked at the cage. It wasn't just a cage. It was a marvel of cruelty. The bars were electrified. He could hear the faint hum. The collar around her neck was linked to the house system. If I try to force that door, Peter said, the system might kill you. That collar is a neural interlock. I saw the readout last night. It's connected to your spinal column. Bessie touched the metal band around her throat. Her expression darkened. The leash. Is that what they call it? It is what it is, she said. It makes me small. Makes me perform. Perform? Peter asked. The voice last night, Gideon. He talked about a show. Bessie shifted, pulling her knees to her chest. The pride in her posture faltered for a second. I was strong. In the pits. On the moons of Calda. I fought. I won. You were a gladiator, Peter surmised. I was a champion, she corrected him, her voice fierce. I did not just fight. I survived. 12 seasons. But I survived too well. The crowd gets bored if the blood is always the other guy's. They wanted me to lose, to die pretty. She looked down at her hands, flexing the deadly claws. I refused, she whispered. I killed the challenger, but I did not die. So they put me here, in the box. Asset storage, they said, for when the price is high enough, or when they need a special show. And the collar. It puts the red fog in my head, Bessie said, tapping her temple again. It makes me angry. Makes me forget Bessie. Makes me only beast. When the fog comes, I tear everything, even myself. Peter felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. They turn you into a monster on command. Yes, she said. I want to be free. But I do not want to be a monster. If I escape and the red fog is still there, who will I hurt? She looked at Peter. Maybe you. I'm willing to risk it, Peter said. He stood up and grabbed his multi-tool. But we need to be smart. We don't just break the door. We break the system. He began to circle the room, scanning the walls with a new suspicion. The cabin was rustic, all timber and stone. But now that he looked closer, the deception was obvious. The stone of the fireplace was too uniform synthetic composite. The timber beams had seams that were too straight. Peter knelt by the edge of the rug near the window. He pulled the heavy fabric back. Underneath, embedded in the floor, were metal tracks. Sliding wall mounts, Peter muttered. The whole cabin transforms. He went to the bookshelf and pulled on the frame. It didn't budge, but he found a small access panel behind a row of faux leather books. He pried it open. Inside was a jungle of fiber optic cables and signal boosters. "Pine," Peter said. "What is the transmission range of this facility?" "I am a simple cabin management system," Pine replied. "I control the thermostat and the jazz." "Liar," Peter said. "You're a broadcast hub. This isn't a house, it's a studio." Tick, tick, tick. The sound from the floor grew louder. "Incoming transmission," Pine announced. "Ignore it," Peter said. "Auto-accepting in 3-2, the speakers crackled. Gideon's voice poured into the room like warm syrup. "Careful, Peter," the voice crooned. "You're poking at the drywall. You won't find any insulation, just asbestos and bad intentions." Peter walked to the center of the room, talking to the air. "Gideon, or whatever your name is, I want to renegotiate the terms of my purchase." "No refunds," Gideon laughed. "But I admire the industry. Most people would have packed up and run into the snow by now. You're playing detective. It's charming, really." "You're watching us," Peter said. "Cameras, everywhere," Gideon confirmed. "The eyes of the galaxy are upon you. Well, not the whole galaxy. Just the subscribers to the premium tier. They love the reluctant hero archetype. It polls very well with the demographic aged 18 to 34. Peter felt a surge of nausea. "This is sick." "This is commerce," Gideon corrected. "And Peter, don't break what you can't pay for. That asset downstairs is worth more than your life history. If you damage the merchandise, I'll have to take the cost out of your biology." "Come and get it," Peter challenged. "Oh, we are coming," Gideon said. "The countdown isn't for show. The retrieval team is on schedule. You have, let's say 3 hours before the real party starts. Make sure she's pretty for the camera." The line went dead. Peter stood in the silence, his fists clenched. He looked down at the grate. Bessie was standing now, pacing the small confines of her cage. The threat had agitated her. "He sees us," Bessie hissed. "Yeah," Peter said. "He sees us. Then we are trapped." "Not yet," Peter said. He walked back to the hole in the floor. "He thinks this is a show. He thinks I'm a prop. That's his mistake." He sat down on the edge of the opening, his legs dangling over the abyss. "Bessie, I need to check that wound on your side. The one from yesterday. If we're going to fight, you need to be able to move without bleeding out." Bessie stopped pacing. She looked up at him, wary. "You want to touch?" "I need to clean it and stitch it. I have a med kit." She hesitated. In the arena, medics didn't ask. They sprayed sealant on the wounds and shoved you back out. Or they let you rot to make the next fight look more desperate. "Why?" she asked. "Because infection will kill you slower than Gideon, but it hurts more," Peter said. "And because I'm asking. I won't do it if you say no." Bessie stared at him for a long, stretching moment. Then slowly, she moved to the side of the cage nearest to him. She reached up and gripped the bars, pulling herself up so her flank was pressed against the mesh of the ceiling. "Do it," she grunted. Peter opened the medkit. He worked quickly, but gently. He didn't have the key to the cage, so he had to work through the gaps in the grate and the cage bars. It was awkward. "This is going to sting," he warned. He applied an antiseptic foam. Bessie flinched, her muscles rippling under the fur, but she didn't pull away. "You have good hands," she noted, her voice low. "Steady. Not like a fighter." "I was a mechanic," Peter lied. Then he corrected himself. "I fix ships. Then I fix people. Field medic. During the border skirmishes." "Soldier," she said. "Not a good one," Peter said. "I spent more time patching up the enemy than shooting them. My commanding officer didn't like that." "Mercy is a defect in war," Bessie said. "But useful now." Peter cleaned the dried blood away. As he worked, his glove brushed against her wrist, which was pressed against the bars. He paused. The fur on her wrist had been shaved away. Burnt into the gray skin underneath was a symbol. It was a stylized barcode, jagged and ugly, branded deep. "Asset number," Bessie said, noticing his stare. 49 Alpha. Peter looked at the brand. It was raw and angry. "Is that what they call you?" "Sometimes. Or the cat. Or the beast." She looked at him, her eyes searching. "My mother named me Bessie. It means soft wind in the high grass. In my tongue." "Bessie," Peter repeated. "It's a good name." "It is a soft name," she said, sounding ashamed. "For a killer." "You're not a killer, Bessie," Peter said, applying a biogel patch to her side. "You're a survivor. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Yes," Peter said firmly. "A killer likes it. A survivor does what they have to do so they can go home." He finished the dressing. "There, that should hold." Bessie lowered herself back down. She touched the bandage on her side. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet," Peter said. "We're still in a hole." "We make a deal," Bessie said suddenly. "You fix the body, you fix the lock. I watch the dark. I hear the things you cannot hear." "Deal," Peter said. "What do you hear right now?" Bessie closed her eyes. Her ears twitched. She placed a hand flat on the floor of her cage. "Vibration," she said. "Deep down. The earth is humming. Power. Lots of power moving up." "The transmitter," Peter said. "They're powering up for the broadcast." And Bessie's eyes snapped open. Footsteps. Outside. Snow crunching. One person. Heavy boots. Peter stood up instantly. "The retrieval team. No," Bessie said. "Heartbeat is calm. Slow. Not hunting." Thump. 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 Someone was knocking on the front door of the cabin. Peter froze. He looked at the Pine sensor. Pine, who was at the door. "Visitor detected," Pine said. "Identity neighbor." Peter grabbed the rug and kicked it back over the hole in the floor, covering the grate and Bessie. "Stay quiet," he whispered. "Don't make a sound." "If they come in," Bessie's voice came muffled from under the rug. "I eat their feet." "Please don't eat the neighbors," Peter hissed. He walked to the heavy timber door. He checked the display next to the frame. The camera showed a figure bundled in thick furs, wearing snow goggles, and carrying a rifle slung over one shoulder. Peter unlocked the door and opened it just a crack. The wind howled, trying to force its way in. "Yeah!" Peter shouted over the gale. The figure pushed their goggles up. It was a woman older, her face weathered like cured leather. She had eyes that were sharp and gray. "You're the new idiot who bought the signal box," she said. Her voice was like sandpaper. "I'm Peter," he said. "And it's a cabin." "It's a box," she said. "I'm June Harrow. Live 3 ridges over. Saw your lights flickering last night. Thought you might have frozen to death. Came to check if there was any loot." "Sorry to disappoint," Peter said, blocking the view into the room. June squinted at him. She leaned to the side, trying to peer past him. "Are you alone in there?" "Just me," Peter said. From under the floorboards, a low, rumbling growl vibrated through the wood. It was faint, but audible. June took a step back, her hand drifting toward the rifle on her shoulder. "That didn't sound like plumbing," Peter's mind raced. "It's my cat." "Your cat," June raised an eyebrow. "Sounds like a tectonic plate grinding." "He's a big cat," Peter said. "Maine Coon mix, very vocal. He's upset about the move." "Uh-huh," June said. She looked at Peter, then at the floor, then back at Peter. She sniffed the air. "Smells like ozone and antiseptic in there. And something musky." "Litter box issues," Peter said desperately. "Look, June, I appreciate the check-in. But I'm fine." June stared at him for a long moment. She chewed on the inside of her cheek. She was deciding something. "You know," she said slowly, "the last guy who lived here, he said he had a dog. Never saw the dog. Then one night the lights went crazy, like an aurora borealis touching the ground. Next day, guy was gone. No dog, no guy, just the house humming away. I'm not going anywhere, Peter said. Maybe not by choice, June said. She reached into her heavy coat and pulled out a bulky, archaic-looking radio and a mesh bag of canned food. She shoved them into Peter's chest. Take this, she said. Local frequency, encrypted, doesn't go through the satellites. If your cat gets too rowdy, or if the landlords come calling you scream on Channel 4. Why are you helping me? Peter asked, taking the items. Because I don't like the noise this house makes, June said. It gives me a headache. She turned to leave, trudging back into the snow. Then she stopped and looked back. Hey, cat lover, she yelled. Yeah. If you decide to do any renovations, she pointed a gloved finger at the ground, and you see a bundle of yellow wires running under the subfloor, don't cut them. That's the trigger. You cut those, the house calls home. She didn't wait for a response. She vanished into the whiteout. Peter closed the door and locked it. He leaned against the wood, exhaling a breath he felt like he'd been holding for 10 minutes. He walked back to the rug and pulled it aside. Yellow wires, Peter said. Bessie looked up. The old female. She knows. She suspects, Peter said. She called it the signal box. She knows something is wrong with this place. Is she friend? She gave us food and a radio, Peter said, holding up the mesh bag. Where I come from, that's a marriage proposal. But for now, let's call her a tentative ally. He tossed a can of protein stew down to Bessie. She caught it with one hand. Yellow wires, Peter repeated, his mind working. If cutting them calls home, that means they're a dead man's switch, or a tamper alarm. So we do not cut, Bessie said, crushing the can open. No, Peter said. He knelt and picked up his pry bar again. We follow them. He moved to the corner of the room where the wall met the floor. June had pointed vaguely, but he had a hunch. He jammed the pry bar under the baseboard. What are you doing? Bessie asked, mouth full of stew. I'm done being a tenant, Peter grunted, heaving on the bar. The wood splintered. I'm starting a renovation. He ripped up a long section of the floorboard. Underneath, amidst the insulation and dust, sat a thick conduit of cables, black-red, and one thick pulsing yellow line. There it is, Peter said. He traced the line with his flashlight. It didn't go to the wall outlets. It went down, straight down, disappearing through a sealed grommet in the subfloor, bypassing the basement level entirely. It goes deep, Peter said. Deeper than your cage. Bessie pressed her ear to the floor of her cage. I hear it. Fans. Big ones. Spinning below me. There's a third level, Peter realized. The cage isn't the bottom. It's the elevator. Tick, 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 tick. The sound from the speakers accelerated. It was no longer a slow metronome. It was a fast, frantic beat. Pine, Peter barked. Status of the countdown. Final preparations underway, Pine said. Retrieval team entering atmospheric interface. Estimated arrival 55 minutes. 55 minutes, Peter said. He looked at Bessie. Can you break those bars if I weaken the lock? If you weaken the lock, Bessie said, standing up and flexing her claws. I will not just break the bars. I will turn them into toothpicks. Good, Peter said. Because we're not waiting for them to come to us. We're going down. He grabbed the yellow wire, careful not to sever it. We're going to find out who's running this show, Peter said, his eyes hard. And we're going to cancel their subscription, Bessie purred. It was a low, dangerous sound like a chainsaw idling. Meow, she said. And this time, it sounded like a promise. The sky outside the cabin had ceased to be a canvas of white chaos and had become a ceiling of surveillance. The wind was still howling, but beneath it, there was a new sound, a high-pitched, mosquito-like whine that cut through the storm. Drones, Peter said, standing by the window. Thermal scanners. He didn't need to see them to know they were there. He could feel the pressure of their attention. The cabin, which had felt like a fortress moments ago, now felt like a petri dish under a microscope. "Pine," Peter said, his voice flat. "Initiate privacy protocol, full blackout." "I am afraid that is not possible," the AI responded, its voice chipper. "The property is currently under management review. Exterior shutters will remain locked for your safety. Interior lighting has been optimized for inspection." The lights in the living room flared up to 100% brightness, a harsh interrogator's white that banished every shadow. "They want to see," Bessie growled from the floor. She was crouching low, her muscles coiled tight, her eyes darting to the windows. "They want to know where to shoot." "No," Peter said. "They want to know if the merchandise is damaged before they come in to collect it." He moved to the section of the floor he had pried open. The yellow wire pulsed faintly in the gloom of the subfloor, a lifeline leading down into the dark. "We are leaving," Peter said. "Down." He threw his duffel bag into the hole. It landed with a dull thud on a metal grating below. Bessie looked at the dark opening, then at Peter. "A rat hole," she said disdainfully. "I do not hide in holes." "Today you do," Peter said. "Unless you want to explain to the nice men with the stun batons why you are out of your cage." He didn't wait for her argument. He swung his legs over the edge and dropped. The drop was short, maybe 5 feet, landing him in a crawl space that ran beneath the main cabin. It was a service level, a tangle of insulated pipes, thick bundles of cabling, and the humming machinery that kept the cabin warm in the frozen waste. It smelled of dust and ozone. Bessie dropped down beside him. She landed without a sound, absorbing the impact with her knees. In the confined space, she looked enormous. Her shoulders brushed the underside of the floor joists. Her tail twitched nervously, knocking against a conduit. "Crowded," she muttered. "Cozy," Peter corrected. He clicked on his flashlight. The beam illuminated the yellow wire, running along the ceiling of the crawlspace, disappearing through a bulkhead door 10 yards away. "We follow the yellow brick road." Above them, a heavy mechanical thunk echoed through the floorboards. Then another. "Boots on the roof," Bessie whispered. Her ears swiveled, tracking movement Peter couldn't hear. 3, no 4, heavy gear. "The retrieval team," Peter said. "They're securing the perimeter before they breach. We have maybe 5 minutes before they realize the living room is empty." He started moving, crouching low, his boots shuffling on the metal grating. Bessie followed, moving on all fours. She was faster than him, even in this awkward posture. She moved like liquid shadow flowing over pipes and under beams. They reached the bulkhead. It was sealed with a magnetic lock. "Locked," Peter hissed. He pulled out his multi-tool. "Give me a second." "Too slow," Bessie said. She reached past him. Her claws, sharp enough to score titanium, slid into the seam of the door. She didn't pry it. She ripped. With a grunt of exertion, she tore the magnetic locking mechanism straight out of the frame. Metal screeched against metal, a sound that made Peter wince. "Subtle," Peter said dryly. "Open," Bessie replied, kicking the door wide. They spilled into a corridor that was clearly not part of a residential blueprint. The walls were smooth gray polymer. The floor was rubberized grip matting. Fluorescent strips ran along the floor, guiding the way. "This isn't a basement," Peter said, his voice echoing slightly. "This is a facility." "It smells like fear," Bessie said. She stopped, sniffing the air. "And oil. And something else." She moved ahead of him, now taking the lead. Her predatory instincts were far more useful here than Peter's knowledge of wiring. She paused at a junction, her head tilting. "Heartbeat," she whispered. "Fast. Like a bird." "Where?" She pointed a claw toward a heavy ventilation unit on the left. "Inside." Peter approached the unit. It was a massive air cycler designed to filter the atmosphere for the entire complex. There was a service panel on the side, slightly ajar. He gripped the handle and pulled. A scream pierced the air, high, thin, and terrified. A wrench, flew out of the darkness, clattering harmlessly against Peter's shoulder. "Don't eat me. I'm stringy, I have bad cholesterol." Peter shone his light into the recess of the machine. Curled up behind the air filters was a young woman. She couldn't have been more than 20. Her hair was a jagged mess of purple dye and grease. Her face was smeared with carbon dust. She was clutching a tablet to her chest like a shield. "Easy," Peter said, holding his hands up. "Nobody is eating anyone." The girl blinked her eyes wide behind a pair of taped-up goggles. She looked at Peter. Then her gaze shifted past him to Bessie. Bessie loomed in the hallway, her silhouette monstrous in the flickering light. Her green eyes glowed. The girl made a squeaking sound and tried to merge with the air filter. "Oh God, it's the asset. It's the cat. I'm dead. The cat. I'm so dead." "She doesn't eat children," Peter lied smoothly. Bessie leaned in, her teeth gleaming in the half-light. "Depends," she rumbled. "Are you crunchy?" The girl looked like she was about to faint. "Bessie, stop it," Peter scolded. He looked back at the girl. "I'm Peter. That's Bessie. We are escaping. Who are you?" "Mira," the girl squeaked. "Mira Vale. Tech support. Junior grade. Unpaid intern, basically." "What are you doing in an air vent, Mira?" "Hiding." "Mira," said her voice trembling. "Gideon, Mr. Rook, he gets mad when the stream lags. He locks us in the maintenance closets for focus time. I've been in here for 2 days. I was trying to hotwire the door when the lockdown started." "You work for Gideon?" Peter asked, his tone hardening. "Work is a strong word," Mira said, scrambling out of the vent. She was small, skinny, and vibrating with nervous energy. "It's more like indentured servitude with a side of malware. I hacked one of his accounts 3 years ago. He caught me. Said I could work off the debt or go to a penal colony. I chose the job. Worst mistake of my life. Penal colonies have better food." She looked at Bessie again, flinching, as the giant alien shifted her weight. "Please don't kill me. I can be useful. I know the codes. I know the layout." "Layout," Peter repeated. "Where are we, Mira, exactly?" Mira tapped her tablet. A holographic schematic flickered into the air between them. It showed the cabin at the top, a tiny speck. Beneath it was a sprawling network of tunnels, chambers, and a massive central dome. "You bought the penthouse," Mira said, pointing to the cabin. "But the real property is the hub. It's an underground entertainment complex. Illegal beast fighting, high-stakes gambling, private executions. Gideon broadcasts it all to the darker corners of the subnet." She swiped the map, zooming in on the central dome. "The hub," she said. "That's where the broadcast happens. And that," she pointed to a ring of red lights around the dome, "is the kill zone." "Explain," Bessie demanded. "If the broadcast starts and the main event that's you isn't in the arena," Mira swallowed hard, "the system executes an asset liquidation protocol. The collar it detonates." Peter looked at the collar around Bessie's neck. "Detonates? I thought it was just a neural shock." "It's a shaped charge," Mira whispered. "Small. Directed inward. It severs the spinal column. Clean. Instant. No mess for the cleanup crew." Bessie went very still. Her hand drifted up to her neck, hovering over the metal band. "How long?" Peter asked. Mira checked her tablet. "The pre-show countdown is at 40 minutes. If you aren't on the stage by 0-hour boom." "Can you disable it?" Peter asked. "Me no." Mira shook her head frantically. "I'm just a coder. I can't touch the hardware. If I try to hack it remotely, the anti-tamper triggers will blow it early. You need a mechanic to physically bypass the lock, and you need a master key to shut down the signal." "We have a mechanic," Bessie said, looking at Peter. "I'm a medic who fixes engines," Peter corrected. "I don't have the tools for micro-explosives." "I might," a soft voice said from down the hall. Peter spun around, raising his flashlight. Bessie dropped into a crouch, a low growl building in her chest. Standing in the shadows was a tall, lanky figure. He had 4 arms, 2 primary, 2 smaller ones tucked against his torso, and skin the color of wet clay. He wore a mechanic's jumpsuit that was 3 sizes too big. "Don't shoot," the figure said, raising all 4 hands. "I am Rafi. I fix things." "Where did you come from?" Peter demanded. "The laundry chute," Rafi said, gesturing vaguely behind him. "I was fixing the dryer. Then the lockdown happened. I heard voices. I thought maybe it was a rescue party." He looked at the group, a scarred human, a terrified tech girl, and a 7-foot gladiator cat. "Or perhaps a circus," Rafi added politely. "Another prisoner," Bessie asked, sniffing the air. "He smells of grease and fear, but mostly grease." "I am the maintenance lead," Rafi said. "Also a prisoner. Gideon holds my family's debt. I keep the lights on and the cages locked." "Can you unlock this?" Bessie pointed to her collar. Rafi stepped forward, squinting at the device. He pulled a set of delicate multi-lensed spectacles from his pocket and perched them on his nose. "Model 7 neural link," Rafi murmured. "Nasty work. Very sensitive. If I try to pry it, it explodes. If I cut the power, it explodes. If I look at it wrong, well, you get the idea." "Is there a but?" Peter asked. "But," Rafi said, "there is a maintenance port. If we have the master encryption key, we can tell it to go into sleep mode. Then we can remove it safely." "The key," Peter turned to Mira. "Where is it?" "The main server," Mira said, pointing to the schematic. "In the control tower overlooking the arena. It's the only place Gideon keeps the master codes." "So," Peter summarized, "to save Bessie, we have to go exactly where Gideon wants us to go. To the arena." "Yes," Mira said. "But if we go there on our terms, maybe we can crash the system before the show starts." "Or we die trying," Bessie said. She looked at Peter. "I prefer the dying trying part." "Let's focus on the living part," Peter said. He looked at his ragtag team. A kid, a mechanic, a gladiator, and a tired pilot. "Okay, here's the plan. We move to the hub. Mira, you navigate. Keep us out of sight of the internal sensors. Rafi, you stick to Bessie. If that collar starts beeping faster, you tell me. Bessie, you're on point. I'll watch the rear." "And you?" Bessie asked. "What are you?" "The commander." "I'm the cook," Peter said, shouldering his bag. "And the nurse. And apparently the tour guide. Move out." They moved deeper into the complex. The corridors widened, turning into service tunnels, lined with thick pipes carrying coolant and power. The air grew warmer, humid, and heavy. Peter found himself falling into a rhythm he hadn't felt in years. Check the corners, count the heads, listen to the breathing. "Mira, drink water," he ordered, tossing her a bottle from his bag. "You're hyperventilating. It messes with your pH balance." "I'm fine," Mira gasped, taking the bottle. "Rafi, watch your footing on that grate. It's loose." "Thank you, boss," Rafi said. "Don't call me boss," Peter muttered. "Yes, boss." Bessie, moving silently at the front, glanced back. "You are good at this," she said softly. "Herding cats." "I hate it," Peter said. "I came here to be alone. Now I'm running a kindergarten in a death factory." "Liar," Bessie said. But there was no malice in it. "You breathe easier now. Up in the cabin you were heavy, like a stone. Now you are water. You flow." "Survival instinct," Peter deflected. "Adrenaline masks the misery." "Or maybe," Bessie said, "you just needed something to protect." Before Peter could answer, a buzzing sound echoed down the tunnel. It was louder than the drone outside. It sounded like a swarm of angry hornets. "Seeker," Mira whispered, freezing in place. "Class 4 security drone. It has a pulse rifle." They were in a long, straight section of the tunnel. There was no cover. At the far end, a red light swept across the walls. A sleek, black machine shaped like a teardrop hovered around the corner. It paused, its sensor eye dilating. "Target acquired," a mechanical voice announced. "I will kill it," Bessie roared. She started to charge, her claws extending. "No," Peter grabbed her tail, a stupid move he realized instantly, but it worked. Bessie spun around, snarling. "It'll shoot you before you get halfway there. Revenge is loud, Bessie. Survival is smart." "Humans talk too much," Bessie snapped, pulling her tail free. "That's our superpower," Peter said. "And our curse. Get back." He shoved her behind a thick bundle of conduit pipes. "Raffi, Mira, get down!" The drone accelerated the whine of its engine, rising to a shriek. A bolt of plasma sizzled through the air, scorching the wall, right where Bessie's head had been a second ago. Peter looked around. He saw a junction box on the wall open and exposing raw copper wiring. Beside it, a steam release valve for the heating system. "Smart," Peter muttered to himself. "Be smart." He grabbed a metal pipe lying on the floor, debris from some forgotten repair. "Hey," Peter shouted, stepping out into the open. "Over here, you flying toaster." The drone swiveled. Its red eye locked onto Peter. "Threat identified. Human male, unarmed." It slowed down, preparing to take a precise shot. "Now," Peter whispered. He swung the pipe, not at the drone, but at the steam valve. The handle sheared off. A jet of superheated steam blasted out, filling the corridor with a white, blinding fog. The drone's sensors went haywire. It paused, trying to switch to thermal. In that second of hesitation, Peter threw the metal pipe. It didn't hit the drone. It hit the exposed junction box, sparking a massive electrical arc. The steam was conductive. A web of blue lightning crackled through the cloud. The drone flew right into it. Its circuits fried with a loud pop. It dropped out of the air like a stone, crashing to the floor and spinning lazily. The steam cleared. Peter stood there, breathing hard, his hair standing on end from the static. Bessie emerged from behind the pipes. She looked at the smoking wreckage of the drone, then at Peter. She looked confused. "You didn't hit it," she said. "I didn't have to," Peter said, kicking the drone to make sure it was dead. "Physics did the work." Bessie walked up to the drone. She poked it with a claw. "No blood, no glory, no holes in us," Peter pointed out. "I call that a win." Bessie looked at him. The respect in her eyes was grudging, but it was there. "You fight strange, Peter. You fight quiet." "I don't like noise," Peter said. "Come on, we're losing time." They pressed on until they found a small substation room, a warm, quiet space, filled with the hum of transformers. "Rest," Peter ordered. 5 minutes. Eat, hydrate, check gear." Mira collapsed against a wall, clutching her tablet. Raffi began tinkering with a piece of scrap metal he had picked up. Peter motioned for Bessie to sit on a crate. "Let me check that side again." "You moved a lot back there." Bessie sat. She didn't argue this time. She pulled her arm away, revealing the bandage. It was soaked through with fresh blood. "You tore the stitches," Peter sighed. "I told you not to charge." "I am a warrior," Bessie said stubbornly. "I charge. It is what I do." "Well, now you're a warrior who needs restitching," Peter said, opening his kit. "Hold still." The room was dim, lit only by the amber glow of the transformers. It felt intimate, a small bubble of safety in a world that wanted them dead. Peter worked in silence, his needle flashing. Bessie watched his face. She watched the way his brow furrowed in concentration, the way his lips pressed together in a thin line. "Why help?" she asked again. It was a question that seemed to haunt her. "I told you," Peter murmured. "I need you to open the doors." "No," Bessie said. "You could have left me in the cage. You could have run into the snow. You stayed. You fought the machine. You nearly got shot by the flying eye." "Why?" Peter paused. He looked at the needle in his hand. "I was a soldier," Peter said quietly. "A long time ago. I followed orders. I followed protocol. And because I followed protocol, a lot of people died. People I could have saved if I had just broken the rules. If I had just stopped being a soldier and started being a human." He looked up at her, but his eyes were tired gray and deep. I came to this cabin to forget them, Peter said. But when I saw you in that cage, I realized that if I walked away, if I let you die, I would just be adding another ghost to the room. And I don't have room for any more ghosts, Bessie. Bessie was silent. She reached out her hand, hovering over his chest. She placed her palm flat against his sternum. Her hand was huge, covering almost his entire chest. Her pads were rough, but her touch was incredibly gentle. She closed her eyes. "What are you doing?" Peter whispered. "Listening," she said. "Your heart is steady, even when you are sad, even when you are afraid." She opened her eyes. The green bioluminescence was soft now, like moss in moonlight. "It is annoying," she grumbled, removing her hand. "Annoying?" Peter blinked. "Yes," she said. "It makes me want to trust you, and trusting gets you killed." "Not today," Peter said. "Today, trusting gets you out." He finished the knot and cut the thread. "There. Done." They stayed close for a moment longer than necessary. The air between them felt charged heavier than the static from the drone. Peter looked at her. Really looked at her, not as an alien or a monster or a patient, but as a person. A person who had been hurt just as badly as he had. "Bessie," he started. Clang. The entire room lurched. Peter was thrown off balance, stumbling into Bessie. She caught him, her claws retracted, holding him steady. "What was that?" Mira screamed from the corner. The floor beneath them vibrated violently. The hum of the transformers pitched up into a whine. "Movement," Rafi said, all four of his hands grabbing a pipe for stability. "Big movement. Hydraulic." "The countdown," Mira gasped, looking at her tablet. "It didn't hit 0. Why is it moving?" "Gideon," Peter said, his face darkening. He got impatient. "He's not waiting for the show to start. He's bringing the stage to us." The walls of the corridor began to slide upward. Or rather, the floor began to sink. "We are on the lift," Bessie shouted. "The whole sector is the lift." The sensation of falling was sickening. The cabin, the crawl space, the tunnels. It was all part of a massive modular system designed to descend into the earth. Darkness rushed past them as they plummeted deeper into the planet's crust. "Hold on!" Peter yelled, grabbing Bessie's arm. "I have you!" Bessie roared over the noise of grinding gears. They fell for what felt like forever, but was likely only a minute. Then, with a bone-jarring thud, the movement stopped. The walls in front of them, massive blast doors that Peter hadn't realized were there, hissed. Steam vented from the seams. Slowly, majestically, the doors parted. Light flooded in. Blinding, multicolored stadium-quality light. The roar of a crowd washed over them. Not a physical crowd, but a digital one amplified by thousands of speakers. Cheers, jeers, the sound of millions of credits changing hands. They weren't in the tunnels anymore. They were standing on a raised platform in the center of a colossal underground amphitheater. The hub. Above them, hovering in the center of the dome, was a massive holographic projection of Gideon's face, smiling like a shark. "Ladies and gentlemen," Gideon's voice boomed, shaking the very air. "Welcome to the main event, the Soldier versus the Beast. And look, they brought friends bonus round." Peter shielded his eyes against the glare. He looked around. They were exposed, surrounded. And the only way out was through the control tower that loomed on the far side of the arena, guarded by automated turrets and the abyss. Bessie stood up to her full height. She didn't cower. She didn't hide. She threw her head back and let out a roar that cut through the fake applause, a sound of pure, unadulterated defiance. Peter checked his multi-tool. He checked his medkit. He looked at his terrified family of misfits. "Okay," Peter said, his voice steady. "Showtime." The elevator platform slammed into its locking clamps with a sound like a thunderclap trapped in a steel drum. The sensation of falling vanished, replaced instantly by an assault on the senses that was so violent, Peter almost staggered. They were not yet on the stage. They had landed in the staging area, the backstage, of Gideon's subterranean coliseum. It was a cavernous industrial purgatory, bathed in harsh sodium lights, that turned everyone's skin a sickly yellow. The air here was thick enough to chew. It smelled of unwashed bodies, cheap disinfectant, burnt circuitry, and the metallic tang of dried blood. To the left, a row of cages stretched into the gloom, stacked 3 high. To the right, a makeshift medical bay lay exposed, its floor-stained dark instruments, scattered like torture devices. "Welcome to the green room," Mira whispered, clutching her tablet so hard her knuckles were white. Peter scanned the area. It was a hive of activity. Handlers in armored vests were running back and forth shouting orders. Drones buzzed overhead like angry flies. But what caught Peter's eye, what made the breath catch in his throat, were the occupants of the cages. They were not just animals. There was a Rishan gladiator, old and gray-furred, missing an arm. There was a silicon-based life form from the outer belts, its crystalline skin cracked and weeping glowing fluid. There was a human, a deserter by the look of his tattoos, huddled in a fetal ball. Each of them wore a collar. Each of them had the dull, vacant stare of a thing that had been broken. "He collects them," Peter said, his voice cold. "He doesn't just catch them. He hoards them." Bessie let out a low, vibrating growl. She stepped off the platform, her tail lashing. The sight of the cages stripped away her calm. She was looking at her own future and her own past. "Prisoners," she snarled. "Brothers, sisters." "Not for long," Peter said. He grabbed her arm before she could charge the nearest guard. "Focus. If we start a riot down here without cutting the head off the snake, the collars will detonate. We need to blind the system first." "Look," Mira hissed, pointing at a large monitor mounted on the wall above the medical bay. The screen flickered, showing a live feed. It was the view from the center of the arena. The camera panned over a roaring crowd, digital avatars projecting from the darkness of the upper dome, mixed with the wealthy elite sitting in VIP boxes, behind blast glass. And there, in the center of the projection, was Gideon Rook. He looked impeccable. He wore a suit of midnight blue silk that shimmered under the spotlights. His smile was dazzling, the kind of smile that could sell water to a drowning man. "Ladies and gentlemen sentients of all systems," Gideon's voice boomed from the speakers, smooth as velvet. "We promised you a spectacle. We promised you blood. And tonight we deliver a narrative." The crowd roared. The sound counter on the screen ticked upward, tracking the betting pool. It was in the millions of credits. "Our champion," Gideon continued, gesturing to an empty spot on the sand. "The asset known as the cat. She tried to leave us. She tried to retire. But we all know contracts are binding." The camera cut to a shot of Bessie footage from her capture months ago, looking feral and terrified. "And her co-star," Gideon laughed. "A mysterious stranger. A man who bought a cabin in the middle of nowhere. Peter. A man who thought he could buy peace." Peter stared at the screen. Gideon was looking directly into the camera, and it felt like he was looking right at Peter. "Tell me, Peter," Gideon crooned, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Did you buy the cabin, or did the cabin buy you? Did you really think you walked into that trap by accident?" The question hung in the air, heavy and poisonous. "Don't listen," Bessie said sharply. She grabbed Peter's shoulder, her claws digging into his coat. "He talks to break you. Words are his weapon." "I'm not broken," Peter said, though the doubt flared hot in his chest. Was this set up from the start?" He shoved the thought down. "Mira, can you cut that feed?" "I'm trying," Mira said, her fingers flying across her tablet. "But the encryption is insane. It's military grade. The signal is coming from the control tower, that spire-looking thing on the far side of the dome." "Then we go to the tower," Peter said. Before they could move, a heavy blast door on the far side of the staging area hissed open. A squad of security personnel marched out. They weren't the standard thugs. These were elites wearing full kinetic armor and carrying shock staves. Asset secured, the lead guard barked into his helmet. Prepare for arena insertion. We have company, Raffi squeaked, backing up behind Bessie. Too many, Bessie assessed. I can take 4, maybe 5. But the ones in the back have stun rifles. Peter looked around for cover. There was nothing but the cages and the medical tables. They were pinned. Suddenly, a grate in the floor behind the guards exploded upward. A cloud of steam and debris erupted, blinding the rear of the squad. Through the smoke, a figure emerged. It was not a soldier. It was a woman in a parka that had seen better decades, wielding a modified plasma welder, like a flamethrower. "Hey, plastic heads!" June Harrow shouted. She pulled the trigger. A concentrated arc of blue fire slashed through the air, melting the boots of the nearest guard to the floor. Chaos erupted. The guards scrambled, slipping on the slick metal, shouting confused orders. "June!" Peter yelled, incredulity warring with relief. June sprinted toward them, moving with surprising speed for her age. She carried a heavy canvas bag in one hand, and the welder in the other. She slid behind the crate where Peter was crouching. "You left your back door open," June grunted, slapping a fresh power cell into her welder. "And by back door, I mean the 50-year-old sewage maintenance tunnel that nobody maps anymore." "You came," Peter said. "Don't get sentimental, it makes me vomit," June snapped. She threw the canvas bag at him. It was heavy. "Here, high-capacity ion batteries, and a couple of EMP grenades I made out of toaster parts. Don't die, you idiot." "You are a strange old woman," Bessie said, looking at June with admiration. "And you're a very large cat," June shot back. "Now are we going to stand here and braiding each other's hair? Or are we going to wreck this place?" "Wreck it," Peter said. "Mira, Raffi, stay behind Bessie. June, rear guard. We push for the arena gate. Once we're on the sand, we sprint for the control tower." "The gate is opening!" Mira screamed. The massive double doors leading to the arena began to rumble apart. The noise of the crowd became deafening. The light from the arena spilled in blindingly bright. "Asset detection," a robotic voice announced. "Showtime initiated." Bessie stiffened. The collar around her neck let out a high-pitched whine. "No!" she gasped, clutching her throat. "Not now. Not now." Her eyes began to dilate. The green bioluminescence was swallowed by the black tide of the chemical override. Her muscles seized, locking up as the neural stimulate flooded her system. "Bessie!" Peter grabbed her face. "Fight it! Look at me!" "Run!" Bessie choked out, her voice warping into a growl. "Run, Peter! The fog is red." "I'm not running," Peter said. The guards were regrouping. They formed a phalanx, pushing Bessie toward the open gate with electric prods. They ignored Peter, and the others focused entirely on getting their star performer onto the stage. "Let her go!" Peter raised his multi-tool, but June pulled him back. "You can't stop them!" June yelled over the noise. "If you attack now, they'll blow her head off. Look at the collar, it's armed." The light on Bessie's collar was flashing a rapid, angry crimson. Bessie roared a sound of pure agony and stumbled out onto the sand. The crowd went berserk. The doors slammed shut behind her, separating her from the team, but leaving Peter and his group in the shadowed alcove of the gate mechanism. Through the reinforced glass of the viewing port, Peter watched. Bessie stood in the center of the arena. She was shaking. She was fighting the drugs, fighting the pain, fighting the urge to tear out the throat of the first thing she saw. Gideon's voice boomed. "And now the challenger." A hatch opened on the far side of the arena. A massive cybernetic arachnid, a tank with legs, crawled out. Its mandibles spun, whirring with saw blades. "I have to get to her," Peter said, panic rising in his chest. "You can't," Mira said, looking at her tablet. "The arena is shielded. But Peter, look at this. The collar signal isn't coming from the tower anymore. It's being boosted by a local node." She pointed to a small fortified room just off the staging area. "The tech room. That's where they monitor the biometrics. If we can get in there, we can't turn the collar off, but we can switch it to safe mode." It stops the execution command. But it doesn't stop the pain, Peter said. It keeps her head attached to her body, June said grimly. That's a start. Peter looked at the tech room. Then he looked at Bessie on the sand, dodging a swipe from the cyber spider. June, cover the corridor, Peter ordered. Raffi, get the door. Mira, you're with me. They moved. June laid down a suppressing fire with her welder, forcing the remaining guards to keep their heads down. Raffi scuttled to the tech room door. He didn't bother with codes. He jammed a pry bar into the mechanism and used all 4 arms to wrench the hydraulic seal open. Peter burst into the room. Inside, a single technician sat surrounded by banks of monitors. He was a young man, pale and sweating, wearing a pristine headset. He spun around, eyes wide, reaching for a pistol on his desk. Don't, Peter said. He didn't shout. He didn't raise a weapon. He just spoke with the absolute terrifying authority of a man who has seen the end of the world and decided to cancel it. The technician froze. Peter walked forward, stepping over the cables. Put the gun down. You don't want to use it. You're not a killer. You're a guy sitting in a chair watching numbers. I have to, the technician stammered. Gideon isn't here, Peter said, closing the distance. I am. And I am telling you, you have a choice. You can be the guy who pushed the button that killed a sentient being, or you can be the guy who walked out of here alive. The technician's hand shook. On the screen behind him, Bessie took a hit. The spider tank clipped her shoulder. Her biometrics spiked into the red. The kill switch, Peter said, nodding at the console. Disengage the explosive bolt safety. Now. I can't, the tech whispered. It's protocol. Protocol is a word used by people who are too afraid to take responsibility, Peter said softly. He leaned over the desk, his face inches from the technician's. I know. I used to be you. I followed the protocol. And I have nightmares every single night. Do you want my nightmares, son? Do you want to hear her scream when you close your eyes for the rest of your life? The technician looked at Peter's scar. He looked at the gray in Peter's eyes. He saw the weight of 1,000 bad decisions. Slowly, the technician took his hand off the gun. He reached out to the console. His fingers hovered over a yellow switch. Do it, Peter urged. Be a human being. The tech flipped the switch. On the screen, the flashing crimson light on Bessie's collar turned to a solid, sullen orange. Safety engaged, the tech breathed. Explosive charge disabled. But the neural stimulators I can't stop. The code is locked in the tower. You did enough, Peter said. Now get out of here, go home. The tech scrambled out of the chair and ran past June, disappearing into the tunnels. Stage 1 complete, Peter said into his comms. Mira, can you talk to her? I can patch you through to her earpiece, Mira said. But she might not understand you. Her brain is on fire, Peter. Patch me in. Peter grabbed the headset the tech had abandoned. He watched the screen. Bessie was cornered. The cyber spider was rearing up for a crushing blow. Bessie was on her knees, clutching her head, paralyzed by the conflict between the drugs and her will. Bessie, Peter said. On the screen, Bessie's ear twitched. Bessie, listen to my voice. The bomb is off. You aren't going to die. Bessie swung her claws blindly, deflecting the spider's leg. She roared, but it was a confused sound. I need you to move, Big Cat, Peter said, pouring every ounce of calm he possessed into the microphone. I'm not leaving you. I am just moving. We are going to the tower. We are going to take the pain away. But I need you to buy us 5 minutes. Can you do that? Bessie froze for a second. The spider lunged. At the last possible instant, Bessie rolled. She didn't strike with mindless rage. She moved with gladiator precision. She came up under the spider's guard and jammed her fist into its hydraulic joint. Fluid sprayed. Meow, she rasped into her own comms. It was a growl wet with blood, but it was lucid. Good girl, Peter whispered. He threw the headset down. Okay, team. We are going to the tower. and we are going to burn it down." "How do we get there?" Raffi asked. "The arena is between us and the tower." "We don't go through the arena," Peter said. "We go through the ceiling." He pointed to the maintenance catwalks that crisscrossed the dome, high above the lights. "June, can you blow the lock on the service ladder?" "I can blow the lock, the ladder, and the wall it's attached to," June grinned. They moved out of the tech room, moving as a tight unit. They fought their way up the back stairs of the staging area, June clearing the path with her plasma welder, while Peter covered the flanks with the stun baton he had taken from the tech's desk. They reached the catwalk level. The air here was thin and hot, rising from the lights below. Far beneath them, the battle raged. Bessie was a blur of blue fur and violence, dismantling the tank piece by piece, but she was taking damage. Every hit she took felt like a blow to Peter's own ribs. "Run!" Peter ordered. "Don't look down!" They sprinted across the swaying metal gratings. Drones buzzed up to intercept them, but Mira was ready. She used her tablet to create a localized jamming field, causing the drones to spiral away in confusion. They reached the control tower. It was a fortress suspended from the apex of the dome, a glass-walled command center overlooking the entire facility. The door was sealed. "Raffi," Peter said. "On it," Raffi said. He pulled a bundle of wires from his pocket. "Electronic bypass. Very illegal. Very effective." Sparks flew. The door hissed open. Inside, the control tower was cool and silent, a stark contrast to the chaos outside. Walls of screens displayed every angle of the fight. In the center, a massive holographic table showed the status of every caller in the facility. And standing at the console was not Gideon, but a hologram of him. "You are persistent," the hologram sighed. "I suppose that's what makes the ratings so high." "Where is he?" Peter asked, scanning the room. "Gone," Mira said, checking the sensors. "His shuttle launched 3 minutes ago. He's in orbit." "Coward," June spat. "Focus," Peter said. "Mira the callers. Shut them down." Mira jumped onto the main console. Her fingers flew. "I'm in. Bypassing the firewall, accessing the master node, okay. I have the kill codes." "Delete them," Peter ordered. Deleting and disabling neural override. On the screens below, the change was instant. In the arena, Bessie stopped mid-swing. The red light on her collar turned green. She staggered, the rage draining out of her like water. She fell to her knees, gasping. But it wasn't just Bessie. In the cages backstage, the lights on hundreds of collars turned green. "The doors," Peter said. "Open the cages." "With pleasure," Mira said. She hit a large command key. Every cage in the facility unlocked simultaneously. The roar that came up from the depths was not the roar of a crowd. It was the roar of a revolution. Hundreds of prisoners, aliens, humans, beasts, poured out of their cells. They didn't run for the exits. They ran for the guards. "Chaos," June muttered, watching the screens. "Beautiful, terrible chaos." "They're going to tear each other apart," Raffi said worriedly. "Without direction, it is just a riot." Peter grabbed the microphone at the main console. He tapped it. The sound echoed through the entire facility, booming over the arena speakers, drowning out the commentary. "Listen to me!" Peter's voice was magnified 1,000 times. The fighting below paused. Faces turned toward the tower. Bessie looked up, shielding her eyes against the glare. "The collars are off," Peter announced. "You are free. But the guards are still armed and the exits are sealed." He took a breath. "Do not fight each other. Do not burn the building just to watch it burn. If you want to see the sky again, you have to work together. Clear the staging area. Secure the lifts. We are opening the main hangar doors in 5 minutes. Anyone who is not on a lift gets left behind." He looked down at Bessie. Even from this distance, he felt the connection. "Bessie," he said. "Lead them." Bessie stood up. She wiped the blood from her mouth. She raised a fist into the air. "To the lifts!" she roared. The mob cheered. It wasn't a riot anymore. It was an army. Okay, Peter said, turning away from the window. We did it. Broadcast is cut. Prisoners are free. Gideon is gone. Not entirely, Mira said. She was staring at a secondary screen. Her face was pale. He left a message, a data file, addressed to the architect. The architect? Peter frowned. Who is that? You, Mira said quietly. She pressed play. The hologram of Gideon flickered. It wasn't the showman Gideon. It was a pre-recorded message, stripped of the theatrics. Peter, the image said. I must say I am impressed. I didn't think you had it in you to tear down your own masterpiece. What is he talking about? June asked. You see, Gideon continued, you think you stumbled onto this place. You think you bought a cabin to hide. But Peter, look at the code. Look at the structural engineering of the hub. Look at the collar designs. A series of blueprints flashed on the screen. They were complex, brilliant designs for a subterranean containment facility. The signature at the bottom of the blueprints was digital, but clear. Project Lead, Peter Vance. Dated 5 years ago. Peter felt the blood drain from his face. The room spun. Impossible, Peter whispered. I was a medic. I was a soldier. You were a military engineer, Peter, Gideon's voice taunted. The best. You designed the perfect prison for the Rim Wars. You built the cages that could hold gods. You just forgot. Or maybe you made yourself forget. The hologram smiled. I didn't build this stage, Peter. I just bought the lease. You built it. Every cage, every lock, every collar. You built this hell. I just monetized it. The message ended. The room was silent. The only sound was the distant cheering of the liberated prisoners. June looked at Peter. Her hand drifted toward her belt, not to a weapon, but in a gesture of uncertainty. Mira stared at him with wide, betrayed eyes. Peter, Rafi asked softly. Is it true? Peter looked at the blueprints. He looked at his own signature. Memories he didn't know he had shadows in the back of his mind began to claw at the surface. The layout of the tunnels. The yellow wires. The reason he knew exactly where the weak points were. He hadn't been guessing. He had been remembering. Peter's voice broke. I don't know. The door to the control room hissed open. Bessie stood there. She was battered, bleeding, and breathing hard. She looked at the team, then at Peter. She saw the blueprints on the screen. She saw the look on Peter's face. She walked into the room. The smell of ozone and blood followed her. She stopped in front of Peter. She towered over him. Peter, she said. Peter couldn't look her in the eye. Bessie, The ship is waiting, she said firmly. The others are moving. We must go. Did you hear him? Peter whispered, gesturing to the screen. He said I built this. Bessie looked at the blueprints. She looked at the signature. Then she looked back at Peter. I do not care what you built yesterday, Bessie said. I care what you broke today. She reached out and took his hand, the hand that had held the needle, the hand that had held the microphone. You broke the cage, she said. Now come. The sky is waiting. She pulled him toward the door. Peter stumbled, then found his footing. He looked back at the screen one last time at the ghost of his past smiling at him. Then he turned his back on it. Yeah, Peter said, his voice hollow, but resolving. Let's go home. They ran for the hangar, leaving the hub behind them in flames, the truth, burning hotter than the fire. The silence that followed the revolution was not empty. It was heavy with the noise of survival. The hub, once a subterranean coliseum of blood and betting slips, had been transformed into a makeshift refugee camp. The neon lights of the arena were dimmed to a low, respectful amber. The cages, previously instruments of containment, had been torn open, their bars repurposed into welding scrap or furniture. Peter moved through what used to be the staging area, carrying a crate of medical supplies salvaged from the destroyed guard station. He walked with a limp that he refused to acknowledge his body, a map of bruises and exhaustion. He had not slept more than 2 hours at a time since the broadcast ended. He wasn't running anymore. He was building. Or rather, he was trying to hold together the fragile pieces of the world he had helped break open. "Boss!" a voice called out. Peter stopped, turning to see Mira. She was sitting on a stack of servers, her tablet glowing against her face. She looked tired. Her purple hair faded and pulled back in a messy knot, but her eyes were sharp. "Don't call me boss," Peter said automatically. It was a reflex now. "Force of habit," Mira said, not looking up from her screen. "The perimeter sensors are picking up static. The storm up top is getting worse, but the encryption on the main door is holding. Nobody gets in unless we invite them." "Good," Peter said. "And the others?" "Rafi is in the generator room. He's trying to bypass the geothermal regulators, so we don't freeze to death. June is being June." Peter looked over to the corner where June Harrow had set up a field kitchen. The older woman was stirring a massive pot of protein stew that smelled surprisingly like real food. She caught Peter looking and scowled, but the scowl lacked its usual venom. "Don't stare, city boy," June barked. "Eat. You look like a skeleton wrapped in a wet towel." She tossed a ladle into a bowl and shoved it toward him. It was a gesture of aggressive care. Every morning for the past 3 days, June had left cans of food or heated rations outside the door of the small office Peter had claimed as a bunk. She never said it was for him. She always claimed she had cooked too much or found extra. "Thanks, June," Peter said, taking the bowl. "Don't thank me," she grumbled. "Just keep us alive long enough to get out of this icebox." Peter walked to the edge of the arena sand. The vast space was now filled with the liberated. The silicon-based lifeforms huddled near the heating vents. The mammalian species created piles of blankets in the center. It was a community born of trauma, fragile and tense but holding. And in the center of it all sat Bessie. She was no longer the gladiator. She was the anchor. She sat on a crate, sharpening a piece of scrap metal into a knife, but her posture was relaxed. She wasn't watching for threats. She was watching over her people. Peter watched her from the shadows of the tunnel entrance. He felt a familiar ache in his chest, a mix of admiration and a profound, crushing guilt. Since the revelation in the tower, the blueprints, the signature, the possibility that he was the architect of this hell, he had kept a distance. He felt like a contagion. Bessie looked up. Her ears swiveled toward him before he even moved. "You are hovering," she called out. Her voice carried easily across the distance. Peter walked down the ramp to join her. "Just checking the lines." "The lines are fine," Bessie said. "The people are fed. The wounds are closing. You should sleep." "I can't," Peter said. Bessie stopped sharpening the knife. She looked at him with those unsettlingly intelligent green eyes. "Because of the ghosts." "Because of the math," Peter said, sitting down on the sand a few feet away. "We have 300 sentients down here. Supplies for 2 weeks. And Gideon is out there." "Gideon ran," Bessie said dismissively. "He is a merchant. Merchants do not fight when the profit margin drops." "He's not just a merchant," Peter said. "He's a man with a reputation. We burned his stage. He won't let that slide." Bessie didn't answer immediately. She shifted, uncrossing her legs. "You worry too much about the enemy, Peter. You do not worry enough about the family," Peter blinked. "Family." The small, loud girl, the 4-armed greasemaker, the angry old female, Bessie listed them. "And me. We are a pack now. A pride." "I'm not part of the pack," Peter said, his voice low. "I'm just the guy who opened the door." "You are the guy who stayed," Bessie corrected. She stood up and moved closer. It was a fluid, predatory grace that she had repurposed for comfort. She sat down next to him close enough that he could feel the heat radiating from her fur. "Sleep," she ordered. "Bessie, I'm fine." "Sleep," she repeated, darker this time. Peter leaned his head back against the crate. He didn't intend to close his eyes, but his body betrayed him. The warmth of her presence was a narcotic. For the first time in 5 years, the constant low-level hum of anxiety in his brain quieted. He drifted off. Sometime in the night, he woke up. The arena was silent, save for the rhythmic breathing of the sleepers. He realized he had slid sideways. His head was resting on Bessie's shoulder. She was asleep, her chin tucked into her chest, her arm draped protectively over his legs. She wasn't guarding him. She was holding him. It was a language without words. In the arena, touch was violence. Here, in the quiet dark touch, was a promise. Peter lay there listening to the slow, powerful beat of her heart, and for a terrifying moment he allowed himself to imagine that this was real. That he could have this. That he wasn't a monster who had built a prison, but a man who had found a home. He closed his eyes again, and for the first time, he didn't dream of cages. The peace broke 2 days later. "Congratulations," Pine's voice echoed through the facility speakers. The AI sounded cheerful, which was always a bad sign. "You have visitors." Peter was in the control tower, deep in the code of the mainframe, trying to scrub the biometric data, so the authority couldn't track the prisoners once they left. He froze. "Define visitors," Peter said. "Probability of friendly social call low," Pine replied. "Long-range sensors detect an atmospheric entry. Class A Corvette. No transponder." "Gideon," Peter whispered. "No," Bessie said. She had followed him up to the tower. She was staring at the radar screen, her tail twitching violently. "Not Gideon. Look at the heat signature. Twin-ion engines. High maneuverability. That is a hunter ship." She leaned closer to the screen. Her breath hitched. "It is a Rishan ship," she said softly. "It is the Pride." "Your people?" Peter asked. "My clan," Bessie corrected. "They have come." Peter felt a surge of relief that was instantly swallowed by a cold dread. This was the rescue they had hoped for. This was the end of the siege. And it meant the end of whatever this was. "We need to signal them," Peter said, forcing his voice to be professional. "Let them know the landing bay is clear." "They know," Bessie said. "They are tracking my old transmitter. The one I cut out of my arm." "Bessie," Peter turned to her. "This is good news. They can take everyone. They have the space." Bessie didn't look happy. She looked torn. She looked at Peter, then at the sprawling camp below in the arena, then back at the approaching ship on the screen. "They will take me," Bessie said. "They will take the others of my kind. But you are human. To the Pride, humans are either buyers or sellers." "I can handle myself," Peter said. "Can you?" Bessie asked. "They will see you as the jailer. They will see the cabin. They will smell the blood on the floor." "Then I'll tell them the truth," Peter said. "That I helped." "Truth is quiet," Bessie murmured, echoing his own words from days ago. "Judgment is loud." The ship landed 20 minutes later. It was a sleek, predatory vessel that descended through the open hangar doors like a bird of prey. The ramp lowered and steam hissed into the freezing air. A squad of Rishan warriors emerged. They were terrifying tall, armored in ceremonial plating, wielding plasma lances. They moved with a unified discipline that made Bessie's gladiatorial skills look like a brawler's improvisation. The leader, a massive male with a scar running through his left eye, stepped forward. Bessie walked out to meet him. Peter stood 5 paces behind her, flanked by June and Raffi. Mira was hiding behind a crate, peeking out. The leader stopped. He looked at Bessie. He didn't hug her. He slammed his fist against his chest plate, a salute. "Bessie," he rumbled, "you live." "I live, Kale," Bessie replied. She didn't salute back. She stood with her arms loose, her stance open. "I live because I fought." Kale's eyes shifted to Peter. The contempt was instant and physical. He curled his lip, revealing long canines. "And the meat," Cale asked, pointing a claw at Peter. "Is this the owner or the meal?" "He is neither," Bessie said sharply. "He is Peter. He cut the wires," Cale laughed. It was a harsh, barking sound. "Humans sell shows, Bessie. They do not cut wires. Stand aside. We will purge the facility. No witnesses." The warriors behind him raised their lances. "No," Bessie stepped in front of Peter. She growled a deep warning rumble that vibrated in the floor. "You touch him, you go through me." Cale looked stunned. "You defend the parasite. You the champion of the high grass." "I defend the pack," Bessie said. "And he is pack." "He is a human," Cale shouted. "Look at this place. He lives in the house that sits on the dungeon." "Some humans build cages," Peter spoke up. His voice was steady, though his heart was hammering against his ribs. He stepped out from behind Bessie. "And some humans break them. If you want to shoot me, go ahead. But you'll have to fly this ship yourself, because I'm the only one who knows how to disengage the atmospheric locking clamps I just activated." It was a bluff. There were no locking clamps. But Cale didn't know that. The alien leader stared at Peter. He sniffed the air. "He smells of fear," Cale said to Bessie. "But he stands." "He stands," Bessie agreed. Cale lowered his lance slowly. "We have room for the Risari and the others. We leave in 1 hour. If the clamps are not open, I will peel you out of your skin." He turned and began shouting orders to his crew to begin the evacuation. Peter exhaled his knees, shaking slightly. 1 hour, Peter said to Bessie. "That's not enough time." "For what?" "For the data," Peter said. "Gideon is coming back. Or his cleaners are. If we leave now, the evidence burns with the hub. We need the core drive. We need to prove this wasn't just a fight club. It was a slavery ring sanctioned by the authority." "And to find out the truth," Bessie said quietly. "About the signature." Peter looked at her. She saw right through him. She always did. "Yes," Peter admitted. "I need to know. If I built this, I need to know why." "Then we go," Bessie said. 1 hour. They ran back to the control tower. The facility was emptying out. The prisoners were streaming toward the alien ship. The silence was returning, reclaiming the space. Inside the tower, Peter threw himself at the console. He didn't bother with the biometrics anymore. He went straight for the kernel, the foundational code of the facility. "Pine," Peter said. "Authorize administrative override. User Peter Vance." "Authorization pending," Pine said. "Voice print match. Welcome back, Architect." The word hit Peter like a physical blow. Architect. "Show me the history," Peter whispered. "Show me the construction logs." The screens filled with data. 5 years ago. The timeline matched exactly the period Peter had lost after the war. The period he thought he had spent in a VA hospital recovering from trauma. He hadn't been in a hospital. "I was here," Peter said, his voice trembling. "I was here." He scrolled through the logs. He saw the design for the cages, the design for the neural collars, the efficiency reports on the pain inducers. It was his work, his handwriting, his genius for engineering applied to the maximizing of suffering. "I built it," Peter choked out. He backed away from the console, horror flooding his veins. "Gideon was right. I built the stage." He looked at his hands. They looked foreign. They were the hands of a monster. "Peter," Bessie said. She was standing by the door watching him. "Stay back," Peter said, holding up a hand. "You shouldn't be near me. I did this. I put you in that cage. I designed the lock that kept you there." Tears blurred his vision. The guilt was a tidal wave drowning him. He had thought he was the savior. He was just the jailer who had forgotten he had the keys. "I have to destroy it," Peter muttered. "I have to die with it. That's the only way to balance the ledger." He reached for the self-destruct sequence. Bessie didn't move to stop him physically. She just stood there, completely still. "Meow," she said. The word hung in the air. It wasn't the mimicked cat sound she had made in the cage. It wasn't the joke they had shared. The way she said it, the intonation, the pitch, the resonance, it wasn't English. It was a sequence of tonal shifts that hit Peter's auditory cortex like a key, sliding into a lock. Click. The world shattered. Memory flooded back. Not a trickle, but a dam breaking. 5 years ago. He was in this room. Gideon had a gun to the head of a woman, a refugee. Build it, Peter. Or she dies. And then the next one dies. And the next. Peter building, weeping over the schematics. But not just building, hiding things. The yellow wires. A hardline bypass that bypassed the central processor. The ventilation shaft. Too wide for a vent, just wide enough for a person. The explosive bolts on the collars. Designed with a flaw, a frequency vulnerability. And her. She wasn't a gladiator then. She was a captured scout. She was in the first cage. He would sneak down at night to give her water. They couldn't speak the same language. So he taught her a code, a trigger word, a word that he would program into his own mind wipe protocol. If I forget, he had told her, pointing to his head, you say this, and I will know the work is done. Meow. She had tried to pronounce the human sound he used for the stray cat he fed. Yes, he had smiled, sad and broken. Meow. It means I remember. He had wiped his memory because he couldn't live with the guilt, and because Gideon had telepaths who scanned employees. He had to hide the sabotage inside his own ignorance. He had bought the cabin 5 years later, not by accident, but because his subconscious had driven him back to the scene of the crime to finish the job. End memory. Peter gasped, falling to his knees. The air rushed back into his lungs. He looked up. Bessie was kneeling in front of him. You, Peter whispered. You knew. I knew, Bessie said softly. I waited. Why didn't you tell me? Because you were broken, she said. And because the lock on your mind was strong. If I forced it, it would have killed you. You had to find the key yourself. You had to choose to be kind again. She reached out and wiped a tear from his cheek with her rough thumb. You did not build a prison, Peter, she said. You built a puzzle box. You built the flaws. You built the way out. Peter looked at the blueprints again. With his memories restored, he saw it. The yellow wire wasn't a tamper alarm. It was a root access cable. The cage locks had a mechanical override. The layout of the tunnels was designed to funnel sound to amplify a rebellion. He hadn't built a stage for Gideon. He had built a trap for him. I cut the wires, Peter whispered, laughing through his tears. I cut them 5 years ago. Yes, Bessie smiled. It was a true smile full of teeth and warmth. And today, you pulled the plug. Warning, Pine's voice interrupted, but this time it sounded almost proud. Approaching vessel identified. Class C destroyer, heavy weaponry, Gideon Corp markings, arrival in 10 minutes. The scrub team, Peter said, standing up. The exhaustion was gone. He had his mind back. He had his mission back. They're coming to erase the evidence. He turned to the console. Mira, Peter said into the comms. Are you on the line? I'm here, Peter. We're boarding the Pride ship. Where are you? I'm sending you a data packet, Peter said, his fingers flying across the keys. It's everything. The schematics, the financial records, the authority bribes, and the backdoor codes I hid in the system. It's the nail in Gideon's coffin. Received, Mira said. That's terabytes of data. Peter, get to the ship. We're coming, Peter said. He grabbed the portable drive containing the backup. He looked at Bessie. Ready to leave the basement. I have been ready for 5 years, she said. They ran. They didn't sneak. They sprinted through the corridors of the hub, past the empty cages, past the silent arena. The ground shook as the Gideon ship entered the atmosphere, its cannons firing warning shots that cratered the ice above. They burst out into the hangar bay. The Pride ship was hovering, engines roaring, ramp lifting. Jump! Cale shouted from the airlock. Peter and Bessie launched themselves off the edge of the platform. Bessie landed first, her claws digging into the metal of the ramp. She spun around and grabbed Peter's hand as he scrambled for purchase. She pulled him up. For a second, they stood on the ramp looking back at the open maw of the hangar. The hub was dark now, a tomb of bad memories. "Goodbye, stage," Peter whispered. The ramp sealed. The Pride ship engaged its thrusters and shot up the tunnel, punching through the ice and into the storm-racked sky of the surface. Below them, the Gideon destroyer opened fire on the cabin. The laser beams sliced through the timber, and stone collapsing the structure, burying the entrance to the hub under thousands of tons of rock and ice. They thought they were burying the truth. They were wrong. The truth was sitting in the passenger hold of a Russian corvette, wrapped in a blanket drinking tea. Inside the ship, the atmosphere was tense. The Russian warriors watched Peter with suspicion. Kale stood with his arms crossed. "You have the data?" Kale asked. Peter held up the drive. "Enough to put Gideon away for 1,000 years. Enough to shame the Authority into dissolving the Rim treaties." "Then you are useful," Kale grunted. "For a human." "He is family," Mira said, from the corner, where she was sharing a ration bar with Rafi. "And he is the boss." "I'm not the boss," Peter corrected automatically. He looked at Bessie. She was sitting by the viewport, watching the white planet shrink into a marble below them. He walked over to her. "So," Peter said, "what happens now? You go back to the high grass. Reclaim your title." Bessie turned to him. "The high grass is beautiful," she said. "But it is quiet. I have grown used to noise." She looked at the ragtag group, Mira, arguing with a Russian guard about bandwidth, June complaining about the lack of salt in the alien food, Rafi trying to fix a plasma lance with a spoon. "And," Bessie continued, "I have a debt to a builder who forgot he was a hero." "I'm not a hero, Bessie," Peter said. "I'm just a guy with a lot of repairs to do." "Then we will repair them," Bessie said. She reached out and took his hand. Her palm was rough, warm, and massive. Together, Peter looked at their joined hands, human and alien, engineer and gladiator, jailer and prisoner. "Together," Peter agreed. He looked out at the stars. They weren't cold anymore. They were just destinations. "Hey, Bessie." "Yes, Peter." "Next time we buy a house," Peter said, a small smile touching his lips, "let's make sure it doesn't have a basement." Bessie threw her head back and laughed, a rich purring sound that filled the ship. "Meow," she said. And for the first time, Peter knew exactly what it meant. It meant home.